What's up, everybody? Welcome to Scofie Sessions. I am your host, Jonathan Schofield. You can call me Scofie. And if you are here today, you either accepted an invitation to join us, or you maybe are scrolling LinkedIn or YouTube and stumbled across this recording later. And we are so thrilled that you are here. If you don't know what Scofie Sessions is, this is really my shameless excuse to hang out with peers of mine in the industry, in the marketplace, friends, colleagues, and people that I just find really interesting and fascinating to pick their brain. And hopefully you and I can learn something together. So we're glad that you're here. Today, we are thrilled to bring Glenn Antweiler, CEO and founder of Right Fit PEO. I'll give you a chance to introduce yourself in a little more detail here in a moment, Glenn, but we're thrilled that you're here. Today's topic: move, boss, get out the way. How to work on your business rather than in your business. And if you are a business leader of any kind, CEO, president, founder, this is absolutely for you. If you are a leader in any capacity and you've got teams of people that report to you, or you're responsible for a multitude of hats in your organization, then you are in the right place. Today, we're going to talk about ways that you can remove some of those hats, delegate some of those hats, and the do's and don'ts of outsourcing, and a host of other things that we're going to explore together today. Glenn and I have something in common in that we both do matchmaking of a kind, though we are both slightly different in who we match and how we match. So if you don't know me, I help MSPs and IT providers get matched to folks who need help with IT services, cybersecurity, or compliance. And Glenn will share a little bit more about what he does, but there's some similarities there. So Glenn, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you joining us today. Introduce yourself to the chat.
Absolutely. Hey, Scofie. So, as you said, Glenn Antweiler, I'm CEO of Right Fit PEO. And kind of like what you're talking about, Scofie, about being kind of that matchmaker, Right Fit PEO, kind of apropos with the name, we help companies figure out which PEOs make the most sense for their business, their specific needs now and into the future. Because it's one of those things that's not necessarily an easy industry to fully comprehend or get your arms kind of wrapped around, and it's very time consuming as well. So we come in and help out with that. But so I've been in this space for about 14 years now, and I've been dealing with working with the small business market for somewhere around 30, 31 years now. I started off in investment banking out in California, Century City, back in 1994, age myself here a little bit, but taking companies public through IPO work, which was a lot of fun, super eye-opening, fresh out of school, and put me right at the crux of helping small businesses that were not in the startup phase, of course, but certainly further down the line of, getting past capital raises and looking at actually, going public and doing it public funding. So interesting space, and stayed in that industry for about 13 years total, and it changed a ton over the years, but have enjoyed working with small businesses for a long time.
I can imagine that your experience in prepping businesses for acquisition and investment, it really prepped you for what you do today, because you probably got to see all of the operational dysfunction and the multitude of hats that were disproportionately distributed across teams and leaders, and probably saw firsthand a lot of the consequences and symptoms of those realities. Is that a fair assessment? Is that true?
Very fair, very fair. And it's funny too, because I kind of wish that when we were talking about this topic as an idea for a talking segment here, I wish that we kind of would have had one of those avatars that had multiple, like 20 different hats all at the same time, just kind of stacked up, because it's certainly something that you see in the industry, and depending on the stage of where a business is, right, from initial ground floor concept of an idea, that initial, I'm trying to get this thing launched, to getting those first round of funding, or those that are bootstrapping, right? And it's oftentimes, the bootstrappers, I think, that are probably The ones that are, with wearing more hats because they just don't necessarily. Uh, there's a vast difference, right? You've got these bootstrappers that know the value of every single dollar, and they'll hang on to that, and they'll work as hard as they can on everything themselves, versus letting somebody else come in and help out with the project, versus the entrepreneur that's done a series of funding, has that money and that cash in hand, and it's burning a hole in their pocket. They're ready to go spend it and put it out there and hire too many people, possibly sometimes. To every little cool technology thing that they might think of, which will accelerate the company forward. So the fiscal responsibility is far different depending on the type of organization and the stage.
Yeah, I can imagine that there's a lot of nuance around the journey of that business leader and where they're at, and the way they prioritize who wears those hats and how. Your appetite for wearing hats probably is greater when cash flow is absolutely precious and you're not sitting on some, investment money that can help fund some of those strategic initiatives. On the other side of that, I see a different side of that coin where, yes, maybe it's burning a bit of a hole, but you're also accountable for those dollars spent. And so there's a layer of discretion that has to be implemented when you're thinking about bringing on a strategic partner for whatever it might be. Before we get too much farther into this conversation, I just want to extend another thank you to those of you who are joining us today on LinkedIn and YouTube. I know we've got a few folks in the chat who have said hello. Jessica, Steve, Matt, we're really grateful that you guys are here. If you are watching this now or in the future, we'd love to hear from you. If you are an outsourced provider yourself, meaning that a SMB or a mid-market enterprise can outsource business functions to you, or you are somebody in the world of you use an outsourced provider. And if you are the latter, I'd love to hear from you what types of business functions you currently outsource, what your experience has been. Maybe you've been burned by an outsourced provider before. I'd love to hear from you as well. What are some things that you need to consider or some lessons you learned when it comes to outsourcing those functions, removing some of those hats? Matt gave us a comment here. Yes, it's much different spending your own money versus spending someone else's. Absolutely, 100%. So tell me, Glenn, why PEO? So, your experiences in prepping businesses for IPO in the past, laid bare a lot of those challenges. And then when you started Right Fit PEO, you specifically chose these business functions and these firms to be the ones that you match people to. Tell us the story of how it came to specifically that.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting. I was running a company that was about 100 people, roughly, real heavy national sales organization. And I had never honestly heard of PEO, didn't know what it stood for. Even when I started in the industry, there was kind of this running joke that it takes you 2 years just to learn how to spell PEO, and it's just the acronym. But professional employer organization for anybody interested. But when I learned about it, it was really kind of stumbling in on it. I bumped into the CEO for a very large PEO out there. He fills me in on this whole thing. And I'm like, wow, okay. So I can give time back to my CFO, who was doing a bunch of HR work, overflow. My HR person was inundated with recruiting, and we had high turnover, and that was an issue that she was trying to combat and deal with. And so I was able to give her back a bunch of time because the PEO has resources for both of these things. And then our bookkeeper was over inundated too, because we had systems that were elsewhere and things weren't talking with each other. And she just was, constantly busy and didn't have enough hands. Right. So the PEO essentially allowed the firm to have a ton of resources, actual human beings helping out from behind the scenes, as well as some technology that really brought everything into one place. And so watching this firsthand, oh, and by the way, we bringing on the PEO also gave us much better benefits because it's that aggregate buying power that the PEO offers. It allows the buying power to give you these Fortune 500 looking benefits that you get at great price. So the company saved 6 figures as well.
Yeah.
Not high 6 figures. It was just over 100 grand, but we saved 6 figures and we gave a bunch of time back to our people, had a bunch of extra resources and a bunch of other bells and whistles. And so I'm like, this is the best thing since sliced bread.
Right.
And so I got so excited about it that I jumped ship from the company shortly after we implemented, and I was director there. So I went from a higher level position straight down to the bottom, knowing I need to start in this, I need to learn this industry. So I started with a company that was one of the big 3 and did amazingly well with them. They're rookie of the year, first year in, and probably because there was a lot of business acumen I had, that helped out. But it was such a great experience being able to come in and see how this effect does for small businesses, where it kind of moves the needle, coming from a operational and a, executive level.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. That helps paint a picture. So you actually were part of a business that chose to use a PEO firm, and you immediately started to see tremendous benefit in terms of cost savings, in terms of time given back to leadership and the team, and additional resources. I'm sure those bells and whistles you speak of, there's a lot more, kind of bits and bytes that could be unpacked there. And you saw the value. When you are doing your matchmaking now, let's say, I'll paint a hypothetical scenario for you. Let's say you're on a business trip and you're down at the hotel lobby bar and you find yourself sitting next to a stranger. You strike up a conversation with them, and you come to find out that they're the CFO for, let's say, a large manufacturing company. Let's say, and let's say they've got 75 employees, and they're doing, I don't know, let's say they're doing 30 million in revenue, something like that. So maybe not large, more of an SMB, but mature. Yeah. You get 3 questions to ask this CFO before an Uber shows up. And he just told you, I've got an Uber on the way, and he's going to take me to the airport, and he's going to be here in 3 minutes. You get to ask this CFO 3 questions related to what you do. And your goal is to qualify him and understand if there's opportunity, and then plant a seed for a future conversation with this CFO. What questions are you going to ask them, Glenn?
Good question. Good. I guess the 3 big questions for me, and it always kind of depends, right? You want to know who it is, your audience that you're talking to. And from a CFO position, generally we're trying to find out, what they're measuring. So, one of the big questions I usually ask is, what are your pain points? What's the company running into? What's the problem? Where are your bottlenecks? Right. With a CFO in the room, it can certainly, lead to some financial questions. What's your turnover rate for your employees? It's not typically a CFO kind of related question, but it is a numbers and data related question, because oftentimes the CFO is put into a position of HR. And that's often because the company of that size doesn't necessarily bring in their own HR, or if they do, they might be a junior person. Right. And so a CFO gets handed a lot of that extra duty. And so my 3rd question is, if you could change something, what would it be?
Yeah. Those are great questions.
Usually that'll open up enough of a conversation to where you start really feeding into a lot of other, aspects of the company that you might not have ever thought to ask.
That's right. I find myself asking similar questions on the cyber matchmaking side for IT, cybersecurity, and compliance as well. I'm trying to understand, what's important to them, where there's friction in the organization, what's holding them back. And additionally, if you could wave a magic wand, I often ask this question: if you could wave a magic wand and this be true in your business tomorrow, what would you use that wand wave on. And you notice in both your questions and mine, I didn't talk about technology and you didn't talk about HR, payroll, benefits, or anything. We're talking about general business conversation. And that is the entryway into having the deeper conversation. You mentioned that when you were working for one of the big three, and I can kind of fill in the gaps in my mind to think who you might have been working for, that your business acumen allowed you to accelerate quickly into that organization and do really well for yourself. What would you say is the biggest thing that CFO is probably not thinking about if he should be thinking about it?
Well, and again, it's kind of the CFO is really looking at things from the lens of a CFO. So they're looking at the finances. A good CFO is going to be looking at future and where the money can take the company. So hopefully they're in lockstep with the either owner of the company or the CEO, president of the company. So, and what I mean by lockstep is there good communication happening on the executive level on where the company direction is? And so, one of the questions that can happen is, or that I tend to like to ask, if I'm not talking directly to the CEO and it's a CFO, is do you feel like the rest of the team, the rest of the company, down to your entry level position, understands your mission, vision, values, and goals? And from there, you'll learn a lot. And it's not necessarily that it's the position of the CFO to know these things, but your executive suite should all be really on that same page and all aiming towards the same thing. Because even though the CFO, their role is to handle the future finances of the organization, right? Where the money is going to be spent, that should be directed. That should be already earmarked for whatever XYZ project that they're thinking about accomplishing over that next 6 months, 12 months, so on.
I think you make a really interesting point. When we talk about strategic vision and getting buy-in across the organization, oftentimes business leaders get fixated on the specifics of an obstacle right in front of them, and they're looking at the tree rather than the entire forest. And that becomes a very reactive, you become very reactive in how you address business pain when you have a narrow focus that isn't filtered through a strategic vision. So like a lot of folks find themselves in a position where, we have this IT problem, this very specific thing that is either uncomfortable or disruptive or needs addressing. So from the crucible of pain, they say, ouch, that hurts. And they go seek a Band-Aid to solve for that pain. And that's reactive. If you had taken a step back, maybe 6 months ago, or a year ago, or take a look now in preparation for 6 months, 12 months from now, where you seek to be, you start to anticipate some of those things before they, are knocking on your door. And that can be an HR thing, that could be an IT thing, it could be a compliance thing. And if the organization is all flowing towards the same goal, vision, and mission, and that's facilitated by the leadership team, all of a sudden your decision-making is filtered through, does this align with where we're going? Yep. And you're going to find yourself much more prepared for those circumstances when they arise, and they do arise, but you're going to have a methodology in place by which you can make intelligent business decisions rather than, oh man, we just tried to onboard 75 employees this quarter and it was an absolute nightmare, so we need to bring in a PEO firm. Maybe it's like, hey, do we anticipate bringing on a high volume of new employees in the near future? Are we sure we can handle this? And is this type of growth in alignment with our vision and goals? And how are we preparing today to achieve those goals tomorrow? And now the conversation about outsourcing and strategic partnerships becomes a proactive investment in your scalability, your ability to achieve that vision and goal, rather than a reactive, like, oh, we messed up. We need someone to dig us out of this box. Now, don't misunderstand me. If you did mess up and you need help digging out of a box, a strategic partner may in fact be the ticket for you. But I think you still need to have that existential soul searching moment where you're like, how did we come to be in this situation? Because if you just go to an outsourced provider and you toss them the hot potato of your operational dysfunction, expecting them to take ownership of your problem, I suspect a recipe for failure in that partnership. What are your thoughts on that, Glenn?
I would agree. And I have to think that most of the companies that I've talked to, I mean, a really high percentage of them are good about forward thinking, especially if you've got good leadership, good direction from your CEO or president, your owner of the company. How that's communicated down, though, is usually somewhere of, where the communication errors kind of happen, and maybe some of that bottleneck can occur. Because if it's not communicated well to the rest of the team from the top down, it gets a little murky, right? And so if you task folks in your organization with, here's what we're aiming for, this is what we're trying to accomplish, and it's maybe a task that's outside of the scope of, let's say the CFO sees the allocation of funds of this being more than what they believe that actually can happen, you start running into some roadblocks, and it can be a method of, well, either find the money, or we got to go raise the money, or let's find another solution. And so that third option sometimes doesn't come up as clear, right? To find another solution. It's looking at things a little bit more innovatively. And if you haven't done outsourcing as an organization yet, that's where some of the pitfalls can happen, because outsourcing on its surface really is designed to be something that's less expensive than bringing it in-house, right? Because likelihood is you're probably starting a new venture with something, or going into something that, whether it's IT, MSP work, or HR outsourcing, or looking at some even accounting, right? There's all kinds of outsourcing that's out there. A lot of folks don't even think of accounting as outsourcing. They just go, oh yeah, I've got a bookkeeper, and they don't think twice about that being outsourced.
That's right.
So it just has become kind of second nature. It's like calling a tissue Kleenex, right?
That's right.
So if they've had some experience with outsourcing, though, and I know you brought this up earlier about maybe somebody that's had some bad experiences with outsourcing, it can, and not saying that that's common, but it can happen. It may turn them off of doing that. But in reality, if you work with somebody like you, or like somebody like us with Right Fit, where we know the industry, we know who the good players are, who's not maybe doing the best of jobs, who's maybe leaving certain firms, and who's doing a good job of customer service and fulfillment and coming in at the best rates, and your prices right. Having the consultations right between like you, Scopy, or me, or somebody again in these kinds of services that can help matchmake.
That's right.
It makes a huge difference to be able to, one, make sure it's coming in on budget and it's meeting the scope of the service. And the extra kind of cherry on top of it is it doesn't take that CEO's team a ton of time, right? They go, oh, I can just go to Scopy. I know we need this XYZ type of thing. Here's my scope of work that we're going to try to do. And you go out and find it. And it's all that time is on your plate, right? You're taking all that time off of them.
100%. Yeah. If you know me at all, if you're watching this and you know me at all, you might be starting to understand why I was really keen to have Glenn join us today. Because is it a little self-serving? Yes, because of this idea that both Glenn and I want to talk to your business about helping you get placed with a strategic partner if you have the need, sure. But he makes such excellent points, makes a strong case for it. If you have not considered outsourcing, folks like Glenn are able to sit down with you and help assess operational maturity of your organization what your specific needs and requirements may be related to the challenges facing you in your business right now. And with no expectation or pressure, be able to match you with someone you can have high confidence in. Because you could Google outsourced HR in Albuquerque and probably find 25 recommendations. And two of the big three will probably have sponsored ads at the top of that query. And now you've got to wade through an ocean of people all claiming to address the challenges that you have. And they're not all created equal. And in terms of IT services and the cybersecurity professionals that I work with across the United States, there's something to be said for working with someone that understands your vision and mission and where you're at as a business and is matched and aligned in terms of operational maturity. The first thing you might be thinking is, well, maybe the provider I'm looking at is too small. Maybe you need a small provider. Maybe you need a large provider. It all depends, right? I've seen it happen both ways, where somebody who gets connected to an enterprise level solution for their small to medium sized business finds operational maturity is misaligned, because you have the juggernaut over here operating with the Coca-Colas and the Nikes of the world, and I'm a $300 million manufacturing business, and we are not the same. So the way you interface with me is totally different. And then similarly, that $300 million manufacturing company probably needs more than an independent contractor to manage HR for them. And they probably need a PEO firm or a managed service provider for IT that can step up to the plate and address with maturity the needs they have in a strategic partnership. So love it so much. We got a few things from our guests here. Matt, a mission statement is a valuable thing. Yes, from the mission, the cultural attitude towards partnerships is going to spring. And thanks, Mike. I appreciate you. Can't agree more. Hand it off to Scofie. And Glenn, doing the Lord's work out here on the other side of the coin. As we're going to be wrapping up here in a few minutes, Glenn, I want to extend to the chat. Right now, you've got the expert. You've got the expert for professional employment organizations on the call. He's got a nationwide network of these firms he works with, and he matches people all the time based on their requirements. And then you've got me as well on the IT security and compliance side of things. So if you have questions for us, whether you are a provider looking to be matched, or you are a SMB or a mid-level enterprise that is in need of a strategic partner, pick our brains while you've got us. And if you are watching this back later, don't be shy to leave something in the comments. We monitor this content pretty regularly. As we wrap up, Glenn, I would love for you to share with our viewers, why they should reach out to you, who should reach out to you, and why, and then what's the best way for them to get a hold of you, Glenn?
Sure. So easy way to find out some information on the PEO industry too is by going to our website, of course, rightfitpeo.com. There's intentionally a lot of information on there about what PEOs are, how they work. But as far as why they would work with us or reach out to us, I myself am a former founder, owner, operator of a PEO that we took national with the intent to sell. We grew it really quickly with some innovative things and had a very nice exit about 5 years ago. And so ever since then, a little bit of a run out period when I sold the company, but ever since then, we've been consulting, and it's the notion of we really do want you to be with the PEO that's going to make the most sense for you guys moving forward with all your specific needs. There are so many variances that happen in this industry, and there's 600 different PEOs out there, all with a little bit of a different flavor. So it's important to be paired up right. That way you have this most successful chance of growth. And it's a great industry. I'm so passionate about this space, and there's some top-notch players out there that you may not have ever heard of before, wouldn't ever find on a Google search. So it's those kinds of things that we're happy to help out, and we'll stuff out, through through all of our analytical process and make sure it's really aligned well.
Excellent. Fantastic. And what's the best way for them to get a hold of you, Glenn?
Well, feel free to reach us at info@rightfitpeo.com, or you can visit our website again, and there's ability for you to put your information in there and request a call back, and we'll certainly get back in touch with you.
Fantastic. I have placed your website in the comments on LinkedIn, as well as that email address, info@rightfitpeo.com. And I know that you're reasonably active on LinkedIn as well, so you could probably reach out to Glenn and send him a message or connect with him there. We are going to wrap up here. Any final thoughts for our audience before we go to a title card that we're going to end on?
And this is probably well known by most, if you own a small business, whether you're one person, 10 people, 100 people, you've known the different stages that you got to get through or where you're trying to go to. Don't be afraid to ask for help. Look at your resources that are out there. Obviously, internet is one thing. Everybody's got a little ad out there that's going to try to sway you one direction. So being able to talk with other experts in the field, always a great thing to be able to help kind of smooth out some of those rough edges on the good information that you need to rely on.
Love it. Very good. I'm going to end the live stream here, and there's going to be a title card on the end. If you appreciated the content today, there's a few other ways that you can follow us: YouTube, TikTok, X, you name it. There's probably a link. There's a QR code that you can scan to follow us on other platforms. And if you liked the content today, do me a favor, leave a comment, or be sure to follow us and follow Glenn as well. And thank you so much for being here, Glenn. And we'll talk to everybody on the next one.